We're learning the Maimer Parshas Bahar, the first Maimer Lekutai Torah Kisavohu El Haaretz. So the pasuk says, in the beginning of the parsha, Kisavohu El Haaretz, when we're going to come to the land, Asher Ani Noisen Lechem, I'm giving to you. V'shavsa Haaretz, the land should rest Shabbos LaHashem, a day of resting for God, meaning we're talking about sabbatical. Sheish Shanim, and then 6 years you work the land. So the Alter Rebbe points out, is he named Mashma'ut HaKosov, the meaning of the verse at its face value seems, Kimiyad Kisavoyo Laretz, as soon as they come into the land, meaning as soon as you enter the land, so the first year immediately V'shavsa, right away you rest. It means like Shemitah happens the first year. And only afterwards, Koidim Shiaschal Shanim, and only afterwards we start the 6 years of labor. So what does that mean? That we start with right away with the Shemitah, and then we start the 6 years. And that's the simple understanding of the verse. So the Alter Rebbe explains, the Yuvan Vehegdim, understand, Bir Kosov, that says in Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, Pizchuli Achoisi, says, open for me, my sister, Rayasi, the one who provides for me. Upirusha, Shamar Kadosh Baruch Hu Knesset Yisrael. The God tells the Jewish people, the famous idea, Pischuli, open up a little bit, give something, break through your barriers. That then we could be like sisters and friends and providers. Meaning to say that in order to have a relationship, there has to be Pischuli. So really, the simple translation of the verse Shir Shirim is, open for me, my sister, my bride, my kala, all the verses that says in Shir Shirim as a continuation. The Alter Rebbe learns the pasuk that the kama comes after the word pischuli, open for me, and then we'll be able to we'll have the relationship. Means first you have to open up, and then we have the relationship. So he says that how do we have the relationship of a sister? And of that, the Rayasi could also mean that who provides for me. So the question is, according to the way the Alter Rebbe understands the verse, that means different than the simple translation. Because the simple translation is that we're always brothers and sisters. But here the Pischali creates the fact that we're brothers and sisters. So he says, we always have the name of Achoisi, of my sister. Sometimes the relationship is revealed, and sometimes the relationship is concealed. Therefore, the pasuk says, Hashem tells to the Jewish people, Pischu, Pischi, open up, lahasir hamichsa, get rid of the covering, havahester, and the concealment. That that's there. The relationship should be revealed. Because as of now, sometimes it's concealed. Hashem says, Pischuli, open up, that should be revealed. So we have to understand, what does it mean the relationship is revealed? What is this relationship of Achoisi, of my sister, when it's revealed? And what are the things that conceal it, that don't allow it to be revealed? So he says like this. So we're going to learn, we know that the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, as is described in Shir Hashirim, is many times comparable to the relationship either between a mother and a child, or a father and a brother and a sister, or a man and a woman. All the kind of different relationships in the world are comparable to the relationship of Hashem and the Jewish people on different levels. So here the question is, what is the relationship of a brother and sister versus the relationship between a husband and wife, let's say? So he says, the word achoisi, my sister, in the grammar, the word achoisi comes from the name of Ichi Alexandrus. Ichi Alexandrus is from Alexandrus, meaning from the part of Alexandria of Egypt, was a type of weaving that we would weave together a garment that's been disconnected or ripped or cut. So you could stitch it up, or you could put a patch, or you could really open it up and reweave it together that it comes as if it never was ripped before. And that's called Ichi Alexandrus. Ichi Alexandrus is a kind of reweaving of the tear, that the tear should become one. So in here this halacha Where does this come up in Torah? What's the difference how you weave a garment? This comes up in the laws of mourning, right? So if you cut a garment because of someone you're sitting shiva for, so what kind of, well, in those days it was not like today. People had maybe many garments. So this is the garment I ripped. I'm never going to touch it again. In those days, the question is, if this is the garment that I'm going to wear, how do I reattach the tear that I teared I ripped for shiva? So depending who you're sitting shiva on, if it's a parent, if it's a sibling. So Ichi Alexander says the halacha is, what if you're allowed to do that kind of weaving, whereas if you never tore the garment, or does it have to be stitched up where someone who sees the garment sees that it was once torn? Okay, that's where the halacha, the question comes into. So the Shibba Gemara, this is what's brought down the Talmud, the Moed Katan, and the laws of Moed Katan, which traditionally deal with the laws of Chol Hamoed, but also because Chol Hamoed is a question of Shiva, it also tackles a lot of the subject of Shiva. Shumi Lashon Chibur, the idea of Ichui Alexandria Choisi means a connection. Shemechaber Shnei Dvarim, that two things become connected, Yachad Liyis Lachodim Kikuf Echad Mamish, that it comes mamish like one garment. Just like the Ichui Alexandria is not just a stitch, but it's a kind of reweaving, that as if there was never a rip in the first place. That represents a kind of relationship that are mamish like you're one person. Kachu sotu adach mashal inin ava tivis, the natural love, shebinafshis Yisrael mimakra chaitzvam, that they have from their source, means that our source is godliness, and therefore our love to God, shein chelik elikayim imah, that our source is godliness. Mamish actually, mamish one with Hashem, like an Ichud Alexandri, is with infinite light mamish. Okay, and therefore, Gam Lamatis, if that's where we come from a single entity of God, part of God, the godliness mamish. So also, as we manifest in our souls that seemingly are separate in bodies and in people, in time and space, is after the soul comes into a creation. From nothing to something, right? It starts off as part of godliness, but then, right, our consciousness, we don't feel that. It comes down all the way. To enclose itself in a body, and into a materialistic soul, the soul of the animal, the soul of the nefesh achiyunis. So what is the tzaddik? The tzaddik represents the person that, notwithstanding, like a Ichud Alexandria, right? Ichud Alexandria takes something that seemingly was ripped, like seemingly the nefesh is ripped apart from its source and has to enclose itself in a body, in a nefesh achionis, in an animalistic, in a materialistic soul, right? So the midah of the tzaddik is that it reconnects, like an Ichud Alexandria, as if it's never disconnected, while it's in this world. Mitzad nefesh al-kisa, because it's so connected and so shining, the godly soul that's within the person is therefore, how does that express itself? Is cheshkam uchukasam, their want and their desire is always lihiskala b'ar Hashem, to be one with Hashem, libatul b'mitzius, and to totally nullify their existence, I love Yisparach, to Hashem, b'kleis hanefesh mamish, me'umka deliva, with the yearning of the heart, from the depth of their heart, v'chol yimehem, and it's a constant concept. They're all their days, Tamid Bitul Hanal, they're always there. That's the Achaisi. Achaisi, when we're going to see the relationship between, that's represented by the Jewish people, between like a brother and sister, that's the relationship of a tzaddik, where it's constant. You don't have to argue the love. You don't have to, I mean, sometimes obviously there's disagreements and this and that. Things could happen in sibling relationships, but fundamentally the foundation, you don't have to explain the love. You could deal with issues. When you're dealing with two people that get together, even though possibly in the relationship it's much closer, but sometimes there could be a rip that can never be reconnected. But over here, the Ichud Alexandria shows that a brother and sister could get reconnected as if they're one, and that represents the avodah of a tzaddik. That constantly, all their days, they batal Hashem, nullified to God. Machmas, teva nafshaisim, that's the nature of who they are. Shinasalam teva, that becomes the nature. Ein tzrichim shum hisboninus, they don't have to contemplate to build a foundation for this love, or preparation, to awaken this love. It's always there. I'm sitting there constantly. The love is there. Means there's a love that's the love of the tzaddik that's always there, notwithstanding that there has been a change, so to say, from its source. Now the nefesh goes down the soul goes down into a body and into an animalistic soul, into materialistic soul, into the world, and all the details and the seemingly separation. But like in Ichud Alexandri, something that separates could be totally mamish woven back to connected, even while after the separation happened. And that's the vod of a tzaddik, or that's the consciousness of a tzaddik, and therefore it's always there. When you wake up, when you're going on the road, when you go to sleep, it's always there. It's constant, the love of Hashem, and it's not. It doesn't need to be. You don't have to build a case for it always. It's natural. It doesn't have to have the willingness to get there. This is an example of an achas. This is the example of sibling love, of a brother and a sister. That their love is constant, word keva, kavua, unituya and implanted. It's on its own. You don't need to argue the argument for it. And it's from when they're born. And it doesn't have to be awakened. And this representation that the tzaddik feels, that's a mamish, a true love, he calls it. In its mamish truthness, that has no set stop, it doesn't stop. You don't forget about it. You could have years that you don't see the person, but it's there. It's natural. It's always there. But that's when the person is. That's the achoisi. That's when he said, what's the level of achoisi when it's revealed? So that's when it's revealed. When it's not wedged in like that, it's not keva and planted in the heart of man. In order to feel the love, it has to be awakened at certain times and situations. For instance, when you say the Shema, or tefillah and you pray, other times like that. However, every single relationship, or every single moment, it has to be argued. So when it's not being argued, it's chalefes, vayveris. It switches. Chalefes means to switch. It doesn't mean that you stop loving. You stop loving that. You stop loving God. Vayveris, and it passes. Mimenu from the person. Then it's not a true love. That's mamish, the essence of the person's is a soul. Why? So he said, what is it called? It's called sfas emes. Sfas emes could be two things. Sfas emes could be a safa, it could be the language of truth, but it could also be the seam of truth. You have the garment, and you have the seam of the garment. Safa lepiv, shu imra shesaviv beged. It's the seam around the garment, and isfasa beged v'katseyu, only at the end of the garment. So too, the person who struggles with the love and needs to argue the love, it's not keva, it's not constant. So therefore, when it only comes through awakening, it's called sfas emes. It's the seam of truth. V'katseyu, dahainu ascholas emes, aval einin nikra b'shem emes gomra lamite. It's not the true emes. And the Alter Rebbe talks a lot about this in Tanya. That even sfas emes is an avoda. Sfas emes is the avoda of the Beinoni. The Beinoni is the saf. Also, sfas emes is also, you could use from the word. It's the language of truth, but it's not. It doesn't have the essence of truth. V'chein omer b'zohar. Therefore, the Zohar says that sfas emes tikon lad. That when it comes to sfas emes, the seam of truth, it's tikon. It has to be from the word koinein, to be established forever. Koinanta lad, it doesn't mean that it was established. Tikon is you have to work on making it. Tikon, that's your avoda. Make it forever because it's not there always. Koinanta is already, it's past. Leichsiv ele tikon lad. Leichsiv, like it says, Korav Hashem, you want to know who's close to God. L'chol koirav, whoever is close. L'chol asher yikro be'emes, the one who calls out to real truth. And what is the real truth? That's with the essence of the truth, not the seam of the truth. Why? Because the person constantly needs to work on themselves to awaken the love. It's not your nature. So he's not. See, the Alter Rebbe says that in the beginning he says, "Pischuli achaisi." If you open up, you could become my sister. Meaning that he asked the question, why do you have to open? What's closed? The closed is that you're not, that there's things that are blocking That's not a natural love. It's constantly you have to work on it. But you could still become a choisi. The question is if you ever become the real choisi of the tzaddik, or is it always an avoida? So he says, but the fact is that while you have to always be ma'or the av, you have to awaken the love. It's not your natural nature. It doesn't reach the essence of the soul and the heart. However, it's not false. It's the seam of truth. Because at the moment when it is awakened, it awakens what you have. Because you have to remember that the foundation of the idea is that every single soul, notwithstanding of what the person is in this world, comes from the shorish at the root, is mamash one with Hashem. The tzaddik, that's always revealed. That's why he's saying the question is in the gilu, in the revelation. The achoisi is always there. That's what the Alter Rebbe says, that it's always this madrega. So why do you have to have pischuli to be achoisi? You always are achoisi. The question is how much blockage is there, and how much, and how even when you open, how much does it have to struggle to stay alive? So he says, but that moment that it is open and it is felt, it is emes at that moment, because it's revealing what you do really have at the essence in the Nekudas Liboy. Kol chad lefum shirlei, each person according to their level. And they hear the Alter Rebbe says something else, and this is brought down again in Tanya. That's not just that it goes away and nothing happened. It's Nishur Rishimui. There's a sign, a Roshim. It's been engraved a sign that it once was that love, that it was once felt. That when you remember, what's the idea of what is the idea halachically? We make a rishima, we make a sign of something, right? And it has something that's something that there's like a footprint that's been there once. So what does that help? So it reminds us that if we want to start again, we know where to start from. It reminds us that it was there. So it should be zachar when we remember the love that we had during davening, during Shema. It's much easier than had there never been a rishima, an imprint from the beginning. And that's why it says, if you remember, then you'll be able to feel the love. The Hasiba, page 4. Hasiba, so now the question is why? Why is there a difference between the tzaddik that feels it constantly? If you have a chaisi, it means if you want to say, the argument is that the difference between a tzaddik and a non-tzaddik is at the root, either you're a tzaddik or not tzaddik, seemingly what one would understand from Tanya, that the Tanya is talking about how it manifests in this world. But if you're saying at the root there's a difference, so either you're a chaisi or you're not a chaisi. Either we're sisters and brothers, we're not sisters and brothers. We're friends, or we're something else. You're acquaintance, right? You're not a real brother. Why? You're not a real sister. Why? Because we're not biologically related. So if we're not biologically related, you don't have that. You're not connected at the core. You're not connected at the source. So you could pretend it, or you could try to make it, but it's not true. It's never going to be exactly as siblings are, even if as hard as you work on it. But if the truth is that every Yid, every Jew, is connected like a choisi, the only question is that the tzaddik, they're conscious of it. And therefore, just like you're conscious of your relationship with your sibling, you don't have to awaken it; it's naturally there. So he's saying a person that doesn't have that relationship revealed, so you have to have pischuli. But the question is, if at the source it's the same, why is there a difference between a tzaddik and a non-tzaddik? He says, "V'hasiba," the reason, Shemoneh Ava, what's blocking that we have to have pischuli, that we have to open up, is mekanis la'emek l'kud slave. What's stopping the love from being natural? Is because the love is its own being. And when you apply the love to other things, so now you're not loving Hashem. The tzaddik is never applying their love because they're aware of their feelings for Hashem. They're never applying their love to outside of Hashem. But if a person takes their love and applies the love someplace else, you've applied, you've enclosed and hidden the love into your pleasures, into physical things. And because it went into the animalistic soul, it took on the nature of the animal. And its nature is to have ego. The skin of the snake. That encloses and surrounds the power of this love. And there's deviation by madregas shyness. There's many different garments and causes and ways that it goes, that the love goes in the wrong direction. Kama min levushim. A katan lefi katnai, a smaller person, according to small things. A gadol lefi gadol malasei, a larger person on larger issues, not just in age, but also in space, in your mind. And if you want to have the feeling, the revelation, the way it is at its core, even you may think, okay, I got rid of the large garments. But the Alter Rebbe says, in order, you have to even get rid of the small garments. The small, even the levush dak, even the most refined, thin gases ruach, even of ego. And what is it? It doesn't just manifest itself in you're applying it. That's why sometimes it's worse, even though seemingly, right, you have two types of people. You have a person who's constantly struggling, and I'm not saying, not judging who's worse and better. I'm saying, but there's different kind of struggles. There's the struggle of a person who does things they shouldn't be doing, but when they give in to their desire, and then they get rid of it, and it's gone. And you have the person who doesn't give in to the desire, but there's a constantly struggling with what they want to do. It's a struggle for them. So here he's saying is that the levush, the dak, this garment, this thin garment of gases and ruach, but what's fundamentally at her? The problem here is the gases ruach, is the self, the grubkeit, so to say. Gases means the materialistic, of the spirit. Amru Rizal, and when you have gases also as the ego, God can't be with that person. Ego is about yourself. When your agenda is yourself, it doesn't have to be agenda is yourself in a selfish way, but it could also be anytime there's even in a holy way, so to say, where it's an agenda based. So you're separating yourself from Hashem. God says, me and you can't be together. We can't sit together. So what do you do? So if you have a michsa, and the michsa is that you've enclosed your love and your focus and your drive. Gases Ruach is also based on drive into things that are not godly. And so therefore your relationship at a core, but doesn't change the fact that at the core you are brother and sister. So what does Hashem say? You have to cut through that separation. And the word Pesach, a door. Like for instance, if a person's in a situation, you want to break a little hole into the wall, hamafsik that separates you from something else. So you have to break through the wall until you can make an opening. So therefore the person, you want to have that feeling, you want to awaken and reveal the achaisi, the relations, the sibling relationship with Hashem. You have to open up the you have to open up. It's not opening up externally, it's opening up internally. Open up your heart. Open up to the depth of your heart to make from the depth of your heart to let that be revealed. It says all the way deep into the pnimis halev, ma'im kedaliba mamish, the klaisa nefesh, and your yearning of the soul, to nullify yourself to Hashem. Lev nishbar, and part of the avoid is also the avoid of merirus, bitterness, to be a broken heart, v'ruach nishbar, and a broken spirit. Lahasir gases ruach, and part of the broken spirit experience and avoda is to get rid of the gases ruach, the elevated spirit about self agenda, the koyach hamasava, and the desire to physical things, the dvarim gashim, the yisyesh nifred. But by definition, all those things make you separate, something and separate. Apply your heart only to Hashem. This is the famous saying brought down in the Chazal teach us. It says, "Pischul," the famous brought down many times. "Pischuli kechudesh amachat." Open up like an opening of just a needle. Just start. Ani eftach lachem kepischul shel ulam. I will open up like the opening of the hall, the great hall. That's not just any hall. The hall entering into the holy of the temple. All a person has to do is go to the place to make yourself pure. Messiah say, then the person is helped. When a person knocks on the door to God and says, "I want to become pure. I want to open up a little bit," God, then Messiah, you get help. It's not that you're not on your own. Lahasir menu that helps to take off the person. Kol b'chinas madregas gasas zeruach, all the ego and self-interest, and so the person can elevate mila higher and higher, adrema miles to the highest levels. By zeh, and by doing this, and having this experience of making the initial steps, and then God helping you. So the outcome is going to be then you're going to have the love mamish penetrating the depth of the heart until the effect is going to be that the soul is going to nullify itself of its essence, of its ego, of its self-interest, as a flame that goes on its own, to the light of God. And as it's brought down, that the land gets nullified. That's why he says, B'shaf Sa'aretz. Now he answers the question. So why does it say that when you come to the land, B'shaf Sa'aretz, the land that's the rest? Because resting the land means that Ara Ispatla, nullify the land, nullify yourself. That's what you have to start off right away with the bittul, the Shema Yisrael. Peacefully open up, become a choisi, reveal the sister, the relationship. Zuhi bechinas a choisi. That's what it means to become a choisi. Not that you weren't a sister before and a brother, but to reveal what's there. And then you could come to my provider. It's brought down. The Jewish people mefarnesim from the word parnasas, give sustenance to their Father in heaven. Like it says, there's not going to be pushed away from God anyone. No person who can be pushed away. From God Himself. Everyone comes, nullifies themselves from the word shibud to the goof, so to say, to the body of the king. So how can a person who has already become a creation, something before davar b'fnei atzma on its own, can submit themselves to the king? The Zohar says like this: there's three things that connect together as one. Raisa, the Torah, Kuchabrichu, Hashem, and Yisrael. Yisrael by Raisa. So therefore, Raisa b'Kuchabrichu, the Torah is connected to Hashem, and Yisrael is connected to the Torah. Because in some levels, the way the Jewish people are in this world, the Torah is higher than the Jewish people, which is Makar Chaytz from Dairaisim because the Torah comes from God's wisdom. What was the person who comes to the world to come with their Torah in their hand, so to say? So he says, now we have to understand. So how's the Torah greater? So we're saying that how do we give sustenance to Hashem is through the connection of Torah, Jewish people, and Hashem. But the question is, what does it mean to bring Torah back to, if Torah is higher, and woe is the person who comes back to this world with Torah? Because the question is, you're saying that the reason is that a soul comes down in physical, but the Torah also deals with physical issues. For instance, even on the refined level, tzitzis is a physical garment. Film is a physical phylacteries. Sukkah is a physical space of a sukkah and the wood and the walls. The kamadinim, and there's all the laws of mumminess, of finances, utainus, and different claims. Al derech mashal ruvin toin kach v'shem and kach umayin yanim ganeden el yitachnin. What's this all have to do with in heaven? There's laws where one says if someone finds a garment, or someone has two people holding a garment, and one person says it's completely mine, and the other person says it's completely mine, and the Torah decides the law, right? Elam Metzias. The Torah decides the law of who owns it. So the Torah is dealing in questions of someone's obviously not telling the truth. So what does this mean that the Torah, that someone comes with Torah? Torah is seemingly Torah is laws that meaning to say what Alter Rebbe is asking over here is that the Gemara says, or it's brought down that Asher Mishabal the 20 is the Gemara Psachim, that woe is the great is the person, praiseworthy be the person who comes to the world to come with the Torah that he studied. What's the Torah? The Torah seemingly is almost like a guide for the person to live in this world. But once you pass this world, they should be seen as unnecessary points. So what comes up to? So you could say the mitzvahs, the commandments that you've done, that you survived the world and what have you. But that's what you're bringing to heaven is the laws of the Torah that are seemingly not necessary in the Garden of Eden. He says, it says, "L'chu, go out, lachmu belachmi, go sustain yourself with the bread of Torah. Kikamor lechem, just like sustenance, bread. Mazin gashmi, shalov yechi adam chai gufay. It's who ad aidei nivla be'varav shel adam. What does it mean that you get life from bread? You eat bread. You have to eat the bread. Owning bread and eating bread are not the same thing at all. A person that has a cupboard full of bread doesn't eat the bread it's not gonna help them at all. The benefit of owning the bread is your ability that when you need to, you eat the bread, but just owning the bread itself means nothing. So to kacha Torah, so to the Torah, shnikra mazin, that's called the sustenance, v'chaim and life, nefesh aruchni, to the spiritual soul. Shricha shitibal be'ever nafshe. Torah has to become part of you, has to be consumed. Tibala means totally part of the limbs of your soul. V'shava kibsari mamish, and just like food becomes part of your muscle and part of your bloodstream, so too Torah has become part of who you are. And because you are enclosed, meaning to say, see, instead of looking at Torah saying that the question and the answer are the same thing. Nothing's changed. Torah, the Alter Rebbe is not going to answer. It's not answering. The Torah doesn't enclose itself in physical laws. Or in the physical tzitzis and physical tefillin, you have to sit in the sukkah. You have the laws of finance, etc. The laws of this guy claims that, this person, this lady, this man claims that, and this, all the laws of divorce, the laws of marriage. And so seemingly, and the person comes down to this world also is a spiritual soul that comes into a body. So two spiritual things that come into a physical space. And the question is, and so when they're both in the physical space, so they can have a connection because we're sort of say we're both in the same situation. When we go back to our spiritual source, we're separate. No, the Alter Rebbe saying the answer is in the question itself. That by you going into your physical space, and in your physical space you connect to the physical Torah, the way it manifests within the physicality, that is where you connect. Because you're so different, you're so out, that's the only place you can connect. It means like, it's like almost as if when you have a father or son that go to a sports game. Sometimes you say, so why do you connect to a sports game? That doesn't define a parent. Sports game is an outside thing. But it's sometimes in the simplicity of the moment, because it's not about there's no sign of your parenthood that you're at a game together, but that time spent together in something that's seemingly not part of your day-to-day life, there's the connection. So too, the Torah and the mitzvahs, with the soul that comes down into the body, that's the connection. And then when you come back, Ashrei B'Shabalakan, what are you taking? Then you have the connection to the spirituality. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the connection to the spirituality. So he says like this, that dafka, when a person becomes then becomes part of who you are. And that's the way the soul could return back to God, and then it can become. So you ask the question: how do you get connected to the goof, so to say, the body of the king? Because Torah, at its essence, is connected to God, and also the Jewish people, at the essence, are connected to God, but in a different way. And when the Torah and the person connect together, even though seemingly on a physical way, in an outside relationship, but then they become one. So then you're coming back to that's how you connect to the essence of the king, because within that Torah is the essence of God. The esnivla begufi de malkan, to become one with the king. Mamish k'meshkasev achalti yarim divchi. I ate the cone with the honey. V'zeu lachmu v'lachmi, to sustain yourself with the bread of God. Mitchilu lachmu sheyilachem lechem umazin libol be'ver nafshem v'achach b'lachmi. First, it's lechem, it's bread. It seems like a physical idea, but then you realize it's God's bread, and that's how you connect to God. In the Ba'avis Malachas Shabbos, he's going to go. In the Maimer continues. We're not going to go too much further. The Maimer continues that the way the idea of the bread and how the bread, meaning to say, we know that the Malachas Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, are all about food things, or starts off with food things. That all the things you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to plant, because eventually it's going to come to food. So there's different things that are malachas and Shabbos that we learn from cooking. So we'll go a little bit into it. It says v'hinei ba'avos malachas Shabbos, in the 39 in the 39 things that a person is not allowed to do in Shabbos, that's considered a malacha, things of work. So it's brought down Tana Sidur the Pas Naked. So we according to in the Mishnah Klal Gadol that brings down all the different 39 works that you now do on Shabbos. It's based on Sidur the Pas. It's all based on how do you get to the bread. How do we get how does the bread get on my plate? So you have to be Zayreya, you have to plant. In order to have bread, that should be worthy for a person to eat it. And then it should become consumed, and you should digest it and become part of you. And the bread itself becomes part of your muscle. He says you need 4 basic ideas. You need a plant. You need a after planting, obviously, and harvesting the wheat, you have to teichin it, you have to break it into from being a kernel into a flour. Then you have to turn the flour into lisha, into dough. And then the dough has to be baked into bread. So in the 4 principles, you have to plant, you have to turn planting, and there's all the subs of planting, there's other malachas, but you have the planting, and from the planting comes the growing, and when you grow, you have the seed. The seed has to be turned into flour, the flour has to be turned into dough, the dough has to be turned into bread, and only then does it become part of the person. So what are these 4 things in our service of God? What does it mean? So what we're trying to understand is that if we're saying the Torah is like the bread, and the idea is that a person has to consume the bread in order to become one with the bread, and the bread becomes part of who you are. So too, that's how the bread is Torah, and the person consumes the Torah through performing the Torah mitzvahs. So then it becomes part of you. But just like bread is a process, so too the bread of Torah is a process, and you to be able to accept the bread is a process. So he says, what does this mean, Avodas Hashem? So he gives an example. If you plant, and we said this idea many times, you plant a kernel of wheat, or you take a fruit seed, you put it into the ground, into the dirt. And it dissolves, loses. What does it do though? So if the seed disappears, why does it grow into wheat? So it says the power that God gave into the ground to give off vegetation. The seed is a code that that advises the earth that has the power to give growth, to grow out a tree or to grow out a stalk of wheat. So whatever the seed is, that's planted or put into the ground. Because the power for the ground, for the earth to give off vegetation is a general. It could give off any vegetation in theory. There's obviously, like we know, there's better places to plant for different things. But nevertheless, in general, the idea is to give off planting. Like it's a zayim garden, so therefore we take a specific seed. That's like a person who does ma'im nukfim, the female waters, is to give focus to that koyach hatzameach. That what should grow out should be in response to what I'm doing. And from here we understand a little bit the mitzvahs, right? Why do we have so many mitzvahs, different mitzvahs? Why do we have 613 commandments? It's because just like a seed gives off different responses, right? You have, if you put in a kernel of wheat, it's going to grow out wheat, and if you're going to put out a apple seed, is going to grow an apple. So to every mitzvah, the response is what we do. So we do the mitzvah. When you do the mitzvah, that brings down the hamshacha, that brings down the response accordingly. So he says like this. So the idea of the seed is ke'ena losman, is like a avoda from tachton, like it's called ma'im nukfim. The female war is al koyach hatzameach, to the power of growth. Lahatzmiach koyach prati. That should specifically put out what the seed is, not just to put out anything. You don't put in a person doesn't put in an apple seed and say whatever grows, grows. Why? So he says, but where's the power for the apple seed to awaken within the general power of growth in the earth that you give off an apple? Why is the apple seed? Why is it? Where is the source of the code, so to say, of the apple seed to tell the ground to give out an apple? Is because the apple seed itself came from the ground, and it has the koach hatzameach in it hidden. So this is what we're seeing from over here, is this idea of the mitzvahs. That seemingly, if you look at a seed, like he's going to say, the seed doesn't taste like an apple. It's almost no connection to what's really going on. But hidden in it is a little koach hatzameach of the apple. And therefore it awakens about the apple in the ground to grow out apples. So too, the mitzvah seemingly seems trivial. It seems like something even sometimes just basic, right? Don't plant a tree next to my wall. Because if you plant the tree next to my wall, the Torah says, if too close to the wall, the roots will break into my wall. So that seems like a trivial. Where's the godliness in the story? But it's like the seed that's hidden in it. There's a godliness idea. And when you keep the mitzvah, that awakens everything until it grows an apple tree. So how does it happen? How did the seed ever come about? The seed came about because it also came from a growth. And hiddenly it has also within it the power of growth. It became so physical. And it's separate from its essence until it comes into a seed. That doesn't change the fact it has some sort of connection to the power of growth, to the power of growth within the earth, the spiritual message there. Therefore, when it's near kav, it loses itself. It loses how it becomes a seed and reveals that little spark of growth that it had in it. That little power of growth that's in the seed dissolves and reconnects to the power of growth in the earth in general, and nevertheless it gives it a message that what should you give from this? What's the avoda? That's why every mitzvah. What's schar mitzvah? When it says in the Torah, schar mitzvah, that the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. What does that mean? The reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Just like the seed, even though it dissolves, but the growth from it is going to be the same source of the seed is the apple seed itself. So you want to know what the reward of the mitzvah is in the mitzvah itself. Look in the mitzvah itself to know what the reward is, because in there is hidden what's the greatness of what's happening in a mitzvah. So he says, and it becomes an awakening, an arousal to the power of growth. And therefore it grows. The same little message of growth, but the specifics of it, the apple versus an orange or something else. Much more than the seed itself. The seed itself was nothing, wasn't an apple. But it has a little bit captured within it the power of Sameach, and that when it dissolves and becomes one with the power of Sameach on the earth, it awakens that what should grow from it is the power to grow a great tree that's going to give off many fruits. And all the different fruits and tastes and smells. If it's an apple, it's going to give an apple. And if it's a grape, a seed, even though the seed itself doesn't have it, it doesn't include in it the smell of an apple or the smell or taste of a grape. It tastes almost like wood. There's a certain essence of the fruit that's in the seed. It's very hidden in there. It becomes so separate that you don't taste it, you don't feel it in the seed. But nevertheless, it has the power to give out the growth. But when it dissolves and it loses itself and awakens within the ground, notwithstanding the fact the way the seed is on the shelf or in the jar or in the packaging, there's nothing that's going to come out of it is realized besides the fact that this is an apple seed. But because hidden in it, and he's going to explain what it's just going to do with this idea, so too is the idea in Avodas Hashem. In the Kol HaMashal Hazeh, this example, the Pratis and its details, Yispan Namaskal, if a person thinks about it, Avodas Hashem b'Torah, and how it means in the service of God and Torah. In that the Torah itself is all the wisdom of God. And God and His wisdom is all one. Chakim, it's a way of God's wisdom, not in a way that we know. We don't see in the Torah God's wisdom. See, when a person wants everything before they do it, it's like a person say, I'm not going to plant this apple seed on faith that this apple seed is going to grow an apple tree. Show me the apple, the taste, everything about the apple and the seed, and then we have a conversation. Show me godliness in every mitzvah. And then I'll do the mitzvah. Let me understand how when I light Shabbos candles, I put on tefillin, I give tzedakah, that I'm connecting to godliness. I don't see godliness in these things. Explain me the godliness in this thing. Like a person says, I don't need tefillin. I could be close to God without tefillin. I don't see the connection of tefillin and God. So it's like the person who's saying, I don't need the seed to have a tree. Show me where there's an apple in the seed. So he says, the Torah is one with God, but not not in the way that you understand. Because of all the concentrations, madregas and its chains, from level to level, it's lowered itself. Like the seed, it comes into this physical law. It's like the seed or a pre of the planting or the tree. It has within it all the power of the growth. The same utterance that God said, let the earth give off growth, and that is the koyach hatzamech, the power to grow, is captured a little bit in that seed. The hanu eish das, when it says tadasha, the word tadasha is eish, the fire of the rule. When you put the seed into the ground, and then it becomes from something. Something comes from nothing. The nothing is that you don't see the koach hatzameach, the power of the growth, the power of the specifics of the growth in the seed. There's that spiritual life there. It has in it all the beauty of the fruit of what it's good to eat. But the seed its own. It's so concentrated. You don't sell it. So you see the tree, you see all the growth. But in the seed you see nothing. He says, we'll just finish over here. That's the example of Torah. The Torah clothes itself into physicality. And the life force, the godliness that's in it, so concentrated. In the higher levels, in the world of creation, there they see the wisdom of God. And there they see the pleasure of Torah. Mamish understand godliness in all the aspects of Torah. Nevertheless, that itself is like nothing to its source. Because at its source is a wisdom that's not known. So even what they think they understand in the world of Gan Eden, in the space of Gan Eden, it's nothing compared to its source. But when it comes down to our world, we don't even have the pleasure of the mind. All we see is the physical laws. This is what it means. When you plant with crying, with tears, you're going to cut, you're going to harvest it with joy. Because when you learn, you don't have the pleasure. You're not connecting to the essence of the mitzvah, of God's wisdom that's in the mitzvah. But when you harvest it, it's going to be with joy. Because it doesn't change the fact what happens. Just like you don't understand the evolution of the seed to becoming a tree, but it doesn't change the fact that the seed will become the tree. So too, when you and nothing you could do if you don't plant it, you don't put it into the world. If you just say, okay, if it's a seed, it's a seed, let it stay on the shelf. Nothing will come from that. But you become one with it, you plant it, even if you don't understand the process, even if you don't feel the process, nevertheless that becomes one with you. And that's the idea of Ashi Shemisha Bolakan V'Talmud B'Yad. It praises the person that comes, and he says, and he continues with it. And that's not enough. You have to, then when the seed comes a seed, it has to be turned into flour, it has to be baked, and it has from the baking, it has to become, from the dough, it has to become into baking. In order to really become a sustenance to part of the person, it has to go. I mean, it's very nice that there's wheat, but the wheat itself means nothing if you don't turn it into a product. And when you turn it into a product, right? Even if you keep on growing the wheat, I'm not going to ever eat my wheat. I'm going to keep on growing it. Eventually, what's the point, right? It has to eventually. The point is, it has to turn into bread, and the bread itself is no point unless you eat the bread. Same thing over here. Eventually, you become part of the Torah mitzvahs, and then even though seemingly at the time you don't understand what it is, but in that and because the Torah mitzvahs is not is at the end of the day is the performance of the Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, as much as you study Torah, if you're not going to do the Torah, the mitzvah, the wisdom is in the seed itself. Therefore, the Torah mitzvah trickles down into this world, and that's why only this world, no matter how spiritual the angels are, no how spiritual the souls in heaven before or after they come into this world are. It's nothing like performing a mitzvah. Like only when you perform the mitzvahs, you become one with the Torah. And that's the idea of Rayasi. That's the idea, means the Pischulich Achaisi. Fundamentally, what do we do? Well, it's because we're going to finish over here. What are we going away with? What does it mean, Pischulich Achaisi, to open up and become my sister? That's to reveal what you are. What does it mean to become provided? It is to become even greater. That because of who you are, then you become one, mamish with Hashem, by doing the Torah mitzvahs here in this world. It means, in theory, to be a sister, just to be, this is who I am, right? Look who I am. I'm the brother of so and so. I'm the sister of so and so. I'm the relation of so and so. But that's the end of the day is that's all it is. But you want to become actually one with the message itself. Is that's through the performing of Torah mitzvahs on you. But that's why the whole purpose of the soul coming down to the world is not just to know that you're a sister and brother, but become even greater, to be substance, to become one with Hashem, in the avodas Hashem, become one with the Torah Hashem, to the performance of Torah mitzvahs. All right, everyone. It's a beautiful mimer continues, but we're going to stop here. Laila Tov, and enjoy the rest of Lag BaOmer. It's still the night of Lag BaOmer for most of you. Take care, Laila Tov.